everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. My name is Kelton Howell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson. This week, we're going to be talking about upgrading precons and continuing our series on getting into Commander.
Yeah, we're going to have a series of videos that kind of cover your first exposure to Commander. You know, we've already talked about getting a precon, and now you might be ready to upgrade that precon. Or maybe there's a new precon coming out that you want to buy, but you normally play at a higher power level, so you may want to upgrade it. So we're going to talk about how you can upgrade a precon and the steps that you go through to do that.
Yes, and before we get into it, we wanted to remind you that Deckcember is going on. So we're doing a 31-day deck building challenge. We're calling it Deckcember, where each day we have a prompt, and you can submit a deck list, not a full deck list, a commander, plus 10 cards for that specific strategy that you're building that commander around. And we have that in our Discord, which, another quick reminder, we have a Discord now, so come and join us in the Discord. We'll have that linked in our channel, and we'll have it also linked in the video today.
It has been so much fun. Thanks to all of you who have already joined the Discord. It has been so much fun to chat there, to share deck lists, to get feedback, and to just hang out. We've really, really enjoyed it. So thank you. And if you haven't already, go ahead and jump in the Discord. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's only been like a week, and it's been already a party in there. We're really, I don't know, it's been really fun. And I think what we're looking forward to is eventually maybe playing some games, people playing Magic in there. We haven't had a lot of that so far. I've only been in a voice channel once while we were doing some testing, but someone hopped in and we chatted for a second. It was really fun.
It was awesome.
Shout out Frank. Nice. Thanks for coming and saying hi.
That's awesome. So, yeah, we're going to start by talking about the 5 steps that we think can help when upgrading a precon, and then we're going to actually walk you through some upgrades that we would make to a deck. Spencer actually helped me. I have a Valgavoth deck that I would really like to upgrade, and so Spencer was kind enough to go through these steps with the Valgavoth deck to provide me with some recommendations, so I'm very excited to see them and to talk about them.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So we're going through the steps. We think there's 5 steps to upgrading a precon. And the first one is determining the power level that you want to build the deck at. This is, if you have watched our channel at all, this is not surprising probably at all that we're saying,
it's always the first step.
Yeah, right. Pick how powerful you want this deck to be. A precon, they can range in power level, but the range is not very big. And as you're upgrading it, the range only expands, right? You have way more options.
When we talk about power levels, we have a scale from low to high, and we would say that precons start at low and potentially go up to a low mid. And that's how we talk about precons. Our scale kind of starts at precons because that is the level at which we generally start our games in our play groups. Yeah,
for sure. So when you are looking at a precon and you're looking at upgrading it, I think some of the important questions to ask yourself are what is the theme that this deck is doing out of the box, right? What is the strategy out of the box? And then how powerful is that theme, right? Like we said, it'll range from low to low mid probably, but that's only because of the quality of cards that the precon is playing, right? And we'll talk about this a little later, but the vegetables that it's playing. And as you upgrade it, you might find that specific strategy just performs very, very well. And so you want to be careful as you are picking the power level that your strategy is conducive to that power level, if that makes sense. Obviously, you can build a deck or a theme or a strategy at any power level, but some you just kind of have to be more aware. I mean, we talk about the boogeyman Corvold all the time, right?
I was just about to say Corvold because I have a Corvold deck that I don't really play anymore because it's not a very fun play pattern. It just very easily becomes very busted at mid-power tables. And so my goal is I'm going to build a food deck with Corvold and try and make it more thematic and not quite as optimized. But it's so easy, as I've been picking out cards for that deck list, it's so easy to be like, well, this gets way too powerful way too quickly. I can't add this in there. Even though it doesn't feel like it's a particularly powerful card, the strategy, the themes of that deck just happen to be very powerful.
Yeah, and that's true for a lot of different strategies. Obviously, Corvold and Treasures are pretty gross, but there are some other strategies that tend to be just very, very powerful. And that's not to say that you're playing your Merfolk deck, you won't have just pop-off games, right?
Yeah.
We had the other day when Kelton was playing the Hawkball Precon, just popped off on like turn 5 and ended up winning the game. It was crazy.
It was awesome.
And that can happen. But as you're upgrading your precon, that's also a good opportunity to tune to make sure that like your deck is performing consistently as well. So determine the theme that it wants to be played at, and then I think also decide if that's the theme you want to play around, right? Like a lot of times when we're upgrading precon, we're sticking with what the theme is, right? It's a zombie precon, we're going to stick with zombies. But there could be a world where it's a zombie precon and then you want to switch to I don't know, like looting.
Generic
or
reanimator
or whatever, right? Exactly. So if you determine that, the one thing to keep in mind is you're going to be making a lot more swaps. We're going to be talking about how to upgrade and the swaps you're going to be making. And the swaps will be just, the number of them, it'll double.
Sure.
Probably, right? The number of cards going to be changing out.
And for our example, we're not going to be changing the theme or the strategy of the deck or the commander for that case. It's going to remain a Valgavoth deck, and it's going to have the same kind of group burn theme to it. We're just going to be upgrading the quality of the cards within that theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, another point we're going to talk about later, spoilers, is we're going to be narrowing the focus also onto that theme. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to move on to step number 2, which is fixing the number of vegetables. Now, if you have watched our show, if you haven't watched our show, a quick little reminder, vegetables are lands, card advantage, interaction, and ramp. So those are the things that every deck needs, every deck wants them, and every deck needs to play them. But
and for some of these, the number of vegetables is going to change based on the power level that you've chosen.
Yes.
But for the most part, regardless of which power level you are upgrading it to, most precons aren't running enough.
Yeah, and I will say modern precons aren't as big of culprits of this, of like skimping on card advantage, interaction, and ramp. Though we're going to be updating the Valgavoth precon. Did we already say that? Am I spoiling that? We talked about.
No, we said that already.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We're going to be updating the Valgavoth precon, and I think one of the things that modern precons are doing more is they are playing good vegetables. Like they're playing, good ramp, good interaction, and stuff like that. But I still think they're skimping on the number for the sake of putting in, whatever, like fun thematic cards, which is also good. But if we're updating a precon, sometimes we have to cut some of the more fun, more splashy thematic cards in favor of the deck performing how we want it to. So
yep. And one thing we wanted to note that at this step of the process, we're just adding things in. We're just making sure that we have enough vegetables. We haven't taken any cards out yet, and that's totally fine. We just want to make sure that when we're looking at our tags for our deck, that we have enough lands, card advantage, interaction, and ramp.
Yeah, and that's something you won't be taking out cards, but as you are going through this tagging process and actually like looking through and critically thinking about your deck, you will identify cards that you think, oh, I'm going to take that out later because it either doesn't fit the strategy or it's just not making the cut. So we've fixed the number of vegetables. We've added in a lot of vegetables for our deck, right, to get us to the right number. And now we're going to actually be making some swaps by putting in the right vegetables, right? So we've say 13 is generally our number for each of these. When we're building a mid-power deck, we've said 13 interaction, 13 ramp, 13 card draw. And recently we've kind of backpedaled a little bit on interaction and said maybe a little bit less than 13 at mid-power. I'm still on the fence. Depending on the deck, I'm still on the fence about that. I think 13 is probably a pretty solid number, to be honest. But we want to make sure that we're playing the right vegetables. So we get up to 13, and then, we're playing, what's it called? The one that, Hedron Archive, right? We're playing like Hedron Archive or like Commander Sphere, which maybe we don't want to be playing in this deck, and so we'll just update those to strictly better versions. Maybe we'll play the other one that taps for 3 mana, Felwar Stone, the 4-mana one that taps for 3 mana, Thran Dynamo, or something like that, right? And because we're trying to adjust to make sure that the vegetables we're playing not only are in the right amount, but also the right quality for the power level that we're trying to play at.
And I would say that this is probably where we're going to see the most updates to lands. Most precons have enough lands. That isn't generally a problem. But some of them are pretty bad. And our channel has always advocated that you should play good lands. You should have a good mana base. So at this point, you want to make sure that you're running the right lands, which means you're taking out a bunch of the bad tapped lands. And you're putting in some of the better tapped lands and some of the untapped lands that fit your colors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing we've kind of said, and you said this to me at one point, or you'd read it on a Reddit thread or something, was that a good mana base doesn't make your deck faster. It just makes your deck more consistent, right? Like you're not.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
Or I can't remember the exact wording, but that to me rings true. That like your deck is just a good mana base is just helping your deck do the thing consistently. It's not making it do it better or do it faster or do it stronger or whatever, right? We're not.
Yeah.
Mana Crypt is banned now, but we're not putting in, Mana Crypt.
Yeah.
in our deck, and this is, I guess, that's not a land, but the idea stands. I think.
I actually don't think that the speed of your mana base is as important anymore. I used to think that you want every untapped land possible. I think those are generally still better. You should generally be playing the lands that enter untapped. But we've started to get some really good tapped lands. And like the surveil lands, a lot of times in the game, I would rather have a surveil land than an untapped land. That, if I don't have a way to use all my mana, or it doesn't really matter to use all my mana in that turn, a surveil land is actually a huge advantage for me. So I hope that we keep getting good utility untapped land or tapped lands, because I've noticed that they're actually very good.
Yeah, they're really great. I mean, even the Scry lands, like I think the Scry lands are
I've come
really
back
slept
around on the Scry lands. I used to hate the Scry lands, and I'm kind of back around on them, where I think they actually provide enough value that it's okay that they enter untapped. Though Surveil is obviously just way better than Scry.
Yeah, and the fact that the Surveillance, I think what really pushes the Surveillance over the top, we're going to get into a whole lands discussion now, is that they're fetchable. And so you don't have to play them as a tapped land on your turn. You can play a fetch land and then go get it.
If you don't use the mana.
Yes.
If you don't need the mana, then on someone's end step, you can go grab a Surveil land and then smooth out your next draw. That's just why they're so good.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I would just love to see more tapped fetchable lands that have a little bit of value stapled to them.
It'd be sick. Yeah, if they did fetchable Scries, I mean, that would put the temples just like out of business, but that'd be
That's
cool.
fine.
It'd be cool.
The temples don't need to be in business. They're like I said, they're not that great.
Yeah, they were kind of printed at a different era, and so, but I guess so were fetch lands. So that's not really a great argument. So we talked about some examples of like putting in the right vegetables, but just to give some other ones, we had mentioned Commander Sphere, swapping that out for like Fellwar Stone, right? 1 mana cheaper, taps for basically any color depending on the pod you're playing in, but also stuff like Return to Dust, right? It will destroy an enchantment or an artifact, or 2 of them if you cast it in your main phase. Often I think it's just better to do like something like Stroke of Midnight, right? It's cheaper, you can do it at instant speed, and it hits any permanent. I think it's just a strictly better version that you'll want to play if you're powering up your deck.
Sure. Yep. Totally. So now that we have decided our power level, fixed the number of vegetables, made sure that they're the right vegetables, now we can start removing cards. And we are going to be removing sub-themes. So a lot of precons will have weird sub-themes that don't necessarily contribute to your core strategy. And these are the things that we want to remove. So at this point, we probably have quite a few extra cards in our deck still. And these are the ones that we're going to prioritize taking out.
Yeah, this was what I had so subtly foreshadowed to be narrowing the focus of the deck, right? I think the classic example of this, and we've also talked about this several times on the show, is Prosper Tomebound. The Prosper Precon came with a rat sub-theme.
It cares about exiling cards. It cares about treasure tokens. That's like what the strategy is for Prosper.
Right.
And then there were a bunch of rat cards
just a bunch of
Precon.
Rats. Yeah, exactly. Because the color was black.
He's a
and
warlock?
I guess. Who knows? Yeah, so it just clearly didn't fit the deck, although it did inspire our friend to build a rat deck because they thought it was so cool, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome, and I think it's the
Which
point
is great.
Precons.
Take those cards out and then build another deck with those cards that have that theme.
100%. Yeah, it's not to knock on that, because I do think that's like the point of a Precon, right? Is to expose you to, a strategy, but then also different types of cards. And if you're all just like locked into a strategy with a Precon, it's it would
get a little linear, a little boring at that
for
level,
sure.
at that power level.
Yeah, 100%. So I think it's really cool. And now now that we have extra cards, we're taking out the bad ones. And not that these are objectively bad, they're just bad for what our strategy is trying to be, and potentially bad at this power level. So we might still have some extra cards at this point, once we've done removing sub-themes, because the sub-themes are sub-themes for a reason. There's not very many cards in that sub-theme. So what we'll now be doing probably is just strict power level upgrades, but for the cards within our theme. We talked about doing that for our vegetables, for our card draw interaction, and lands and ramp. This is going to be for things within the theme of our deck. So if we are a Merfolk deck, we're putting in better Merfolk.
Better Merfolk, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can kind of upgrade these things endlessly until you reach a high power level and you're just putting in the strictly best versions of every effect. And so this is where hopefully you've been considering power level throughout, but this is a really important part where you want to make sure that all of your cards are up to that power level and that you don't have any power level outliers, high or low, that none of the cards in your deck are going to be over or underperforming for your desired power level.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about this step is that I think it's actually kind of hard within a theme to have power level outliers unless you are hitting things that are like infinitely comboing, right?
Yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest parts to draw the line, because I do think like a lot of those power level things do come from some of the vegetables. Like, yeah, obviously there's like fast mana, and that's always going to be very good, but you're not going to be playing that in low and mid power levels. But yeah, within a theme, you kind of want to generally be playing the best things in that theme. That's why you're playing that theme. Though I think, like you said, combos is probably a really safe place to draw the line.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that probably applies mostly to mid power and up, which is where we often are playing, because low power, low mid, 1s and 2s on our 5-point scale are generally playing some of the worst stuff. And once you get to mid power, you're maybe not playing Optima Vegetables, but you probably are in a zombie deck playing some of the best zombies outside of combo.
That's a great example.
Stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. There are bad zombies. Like I'll say there are just better zombies.
Right. Yeah. Strictly better zombies for sure than other ones. So cool. Should we jump into Valgavoth and some of the changes we made?
I'm very excited to see what you've done with this deck and what recommendations you have for me.
Okay, sweet. Let's we're gonna jump over to Moxfield with some movie magic. Boom. Great. Here we are in Moxfield together. We are in the comparison view of Moxfield. So up here, I have the cards that I've swapped in. I made 20 swaps, which feels like a good number, right?
That's a great number.
Yeah, 20 changes. And these are the ones that we removed. So we're going to start with the cards we added in, and we're going to start with our vegetables. And so we'll be skipping through this list a little bit. Okay. But I want to start with card advantage. What I found. Okay, should we read Valgavoth first? I guess Valgavoth's not on here. Let me scroll down to the shared between both decks. Is Valgavoth in the list?
It is. It actually isn't, but I pulled it up here so that I could read it.
Okay, pull it up. Pull it up and read it.
Valgavoth Harrower of Souls is 2 black-red for a 4/4 legendary creature Elder Demon, which is such a cool type line. Also, this is some of the coolest art. I knew I wanted this deck, so I immediately bought this deck, and I also bought the playmat that goes with this art because it's so cool. It has flying and ward, pay 2 life, and whenever an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, you put a 1/1 counter on Valgavoth Harrower of Souls and draw a card. So the goal is you're trying to get your opponents to lose life every one of their turns, so that you are drawing 3 cards a turn, so 3 extra cards a turn cycle, and making a very big Valgavoth.
Yeah, making a big Valgavoth and then draining your opponents. It seems like the theme of this deck, to some degree, was not life drain, kind of group slug. I guess is not necessarily because
I think it's like a group burn. I think it's group burn is what it's called.
Cool. Yeah. So we're trying to deal damage to our opponents over time. Hopefully, not as much damage to ourselves, and we don't really have a bunch of like giant threats on the board outside of Valgavoth getting really big or some of our more powerful enchantments. What I found in this deck was that Valgavoth is a great card advantage engine, and as a result, there were some less than ideal card advantage pieces in the deck, and not enough. I think we've said 13 is the right number. I often feel more comfortable at like 15 sometimes, 14, 15.
Sure. Yeah, how many does it have after the fact? Do you know what the number was?
Let me pull up. I can pull it up over here because I think I have the list.
Because I do think that like generally we feel a little more comfortable having a lower number if your commander has some sort of card advantage able to it. But I'm with you, man. Like it's almost never are you like, darn, I have too much card advantage in my hand.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so we ended up at like 15.
Great, awesome.
Which I think is a decent amount, and I'll talk about the ones we added in, and we'll see some of the ones we removed as well. So the first one we added in was Night's Whisper. a classic card. The deck was already playing Sign in Blood, which does the same thing.
Oh, interesting.
Night's Whisper is just a better version of it. The next one we added in was Black Market Connections. This one is just a crazy good card. It's a little cheaper nowadays, which is great. We proxy, so it doesn't really matter as much. But if you don't proxy, it's really great that it's gotten a little cheaper. And I really like Black Market Connections because it double counts. We're counting it towards ramp, and we're counting it towards card draw because you can use it for both, which is really good. The next one we added was Twilight Prophet, which felt very on theme for the deck. So Twilight Prophet says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is that card's mana value.
Oh, cool. So it's going to drain our opponents and give us card advantage.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just going to draw one extra card a turn. And I think one of the things I noticed with this deck, and it doesn't apply to vegetables necessarily. I just stumbled over that entire sentence. But one of the things I noticed about this deck was that the deck originally had a lot of things that were on your turn dealing damage or burning your opponents, which is not what he wants to be doing, not what Valgavoth wants to be doing. Valgavoth wants to be dealing damage to opponents on their own turns. And so some of those cards that were trying to do stuff like that, and we're trying to be like group slug on your turn, I wasn't as big of a fan of because they're not feeding Valgavoth. Now this one is also doing that, but it's not giving your opponents any advantage at all. It's just gaining you a little bit of life, draining some life from them, and giving you some card advantage, which I think is just good.
That's cool. That actually made me think, just that templating that you're talking about makes me think that the new Scrawling Trawler could also be like a really cool include in the deck.
Yes. Let me look up Scrawling Trawler really quick. Is that one...
That one's from Foundations. It's the 3-mana artifact that at the beginning of your upkeep, everyone draws a card, and then it deals 1 damage to your opponents whenever they draw a card.
Yeah, the Scrawling Crawler. Yeah, okay, so...
Oh, Scrawling Crawler, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay, Scrawling Crawler. So, I did think about putting this in the deck.
Oh, okay.
I took out a card similar to this one, which is at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent draws... let's see if I can find it here. Did I take it out? Stormfist Crusader. Each player draws a card and loses 1 life. So,
at the beginning of your upkeep?
Yes. Oh, Scrawling Crawler is better, though. Scrawling Crawler is better.
It does hit them every time they draw a card.
Every time they draw a card. Scrawling Crawler is better. I didn't realize that. But this one felt like a bad version of this because it's giving people cards and it's only on our turn, which we don't want as much. I think Scrawling Crawler is a good include.
Hit them on their turn every time.
Yep, that's good, actually. Okay, Scrawling Crawler could be good include in this deck that I did not include. But it is...
No, don't worry about it. Sorry, it just reminded me of it when you were talking through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good one. I think it's a good one. That would be a good one to add to make sure you're getting those Valgavoth triggers on people's turns. The next one for card advantage was Unholy Annex. So
I love this card.
Sick card, crazy good card. You spec'd on this card and it went nuts for a little bit, which was sick.
I did.
It's an enchantment room. We're gonna ignore Ritual Chamber for now. But on the left side, it is 2 and a black. And it says at the beginning of your end step, draw a card. If you control a demon, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. Otherwise, you lose 2 life. Guess what?
So good.
Valgavoth is a demon. So we feel good about
demon.
That. He's an elder demon.
Yeah,
so this is going to draw us cards, and it's just going to drain our opponent's life, which I think is thematic for the deck. And we just want, I think, as many ways. We want a lot of ways to ping people on their own turns, but I think we also want more ways to just like keep draining opponents as much as possible. One of the cards I didn't put in this deck for that purpose because I didn't know if we wanted it in here, but I think we really do, is Shieldred the Apocalypse.
Yeah. So Scrawling Crawler is just baby Shieldred.
Yeah.
And it's going to go in my Shieldred deck. I have the Shieldred deck, but Shieldred is so spicy. People don't like playing against Shieldred. So I understand why you were hesitant to put Shieldred in here.
Yeah, I feel like Shieldred in the 99 is very different from Shieldred in the command zone with stuff built around Shieldred specifically. So I think there's a place for Shieldred in here. I just stopped at 20. Just to make sure we had a nice round number. The next one for card advantage was Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin. So Ob Nixilis is 2 black red. I haven't read a lot of these, but Ob Nixilis has a lot of text. 4/3 with Flying and Trample. Whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, which I think we played wrong one time when I was playing this card because it's 1 or more opponents. Yeah, we might have screwed that up, but maybe not. Put a +1/+1 counter on Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin, and you exile the top card of your library until your next end step. you may play that card.
That's sweet.
Which is tight. So we have a lot of things that are pinging people for 1 damage on their turns. Yeah. And so this will just be a huge card advantage piece that will get very big, along with Valgavoth.
Do you think it's worth it? I don't know if there are other cards that care about losing exactly 1 life. Is it worth it to make sure that a lot of the sources of the burn in a deck like this are all exactly 1?
I don't think so. I do think a lot of the burn incidentally is, because I don't think there's a lot of things that are like making them lose more than 1 life. But I don't know. And this may be bad. This may play not very well. But I do think it's just a really good card, and I think a fair amount of our stuff will do 1 damage to people.
Oh, I think so too. I think this card's going to be crazy in this deck.
And people will like incidentally lose life, right? Like
this card spiked like crazy when this deck came out because everyone was like, "Oh, this is custom built for this deck."
Yeah, I think it's a sick card. I think it's a really cool card. So I think that'll be a cool include. And the other one I wanted to include for card draw. I guess there's 3 more. The next one is another Obnixilis, which is Obnixilis the Adversary. So this is a pet card of mine that I'm forcing on you as an upgrade to your deck list. Obnixilis the Adversary is a 3 loyalty planeswalker for 1 black-red with casualty X. The copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. So with casualty, you can sacrifice a creature, and then in this instance, the creature's power is X for what the starting loyalty of the other the copy of the planeswalker is. So Obnixilis has a +1 that is each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life, which is great. We like that a lot. That's going to be part of the drain strategy. It has a -2 of create a 1/1 red devil creature token with whenever this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Also great to help make people lose life on their turns. And the last one I think is really sick with our commander. Target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life, and it's -7. So what's sick is that we can, when Valgavoth gets really big, we can sacrifice Valgavoth to Obnixilis and -7 with the casualty copy to draw a bunch of cards, and then start ticking up our other copies to like make people lose life and discard cards.
Cool. That's
which I think
fun.
is kind of a fun. I don't know. This is one of my pet cards, and it felt cool with the fact that Valgavoth does get big.
No, I love that this card. I have a copy of this card that is not in a deck, and so I am glad that this might be the place for it. Also, if you haven't seen the full art of this card, it is amazing. Half of it is covered up by the text box on this card, and you should go look it up. It's incredible.
He's like got Lord Xander or whatever by the it's freaking sick. It's such cool art. This is one of my favorite cards probably like of all time. Like the art is just so good. Just a sweet card.
Shout out to the text is too small on here. Wait, I gotta open this so I can shout out.
Yongge Choi looks like.
Shout out to this artist. Absolutely incredible.
If I butcher your name, I apologize. Maybe that's wrong. Let me look it up. I will look it up. Are you looking it up?
I pulled it open, but it was still too small to see, and they don't have the art. They don't have the artist name on the Mox field.
Oh, it's Yongjae Choi. There's a J in there.
Yongjae Choi. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. The next one we have on this list, another sick card, another card that I think will synergize really well with the deck is Blood-Soaked Insight. First of all, the art on this is also very sick.
Wow, that's crazy. I haven't looked very closely at the art on this card.
It's gnarly. It's gnarly and very cool. So it's 5 and 2 Rakdos hybrid mana. For a sorcery, it costs 1 less to cast for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn, which is great. So we can cast it for 2 mana if we want to eventually. Target opponent exiles the top 3 cards of their library. Until end of your next turn, you may play those cards. If you cast a spell this way, mana of any type can be spent to cast it. And it's a land on the other side. So it'll help us out a lot. And then the last one here is Wheel of Misfortune. I felt like was such a good. It's sitting here on the bottom, face up. So you've been seeing it this whole time, but I thought it was a really fun addition to the deck to make people lose life.
I love it. I love Wheel of Misfortune. That one is a fun one to try and game because I feel like this one's actually like kind of understandable.
Yeah, for sure. It is hard. It's hard to know what is the best thing to do when a Wheel of Misfortune hits. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a sick card for the deck. So that is it with the card draw. Should we move on to some of the ramp and interaction?
Yeah, I saw some cool ramp pieces in here.
Yeah, so in terms of ramp, there were only a couple additions that I needed to make. I did make some cuts on things that we could probably consider ramp. But honestly, like, it was playing good ramp already. So it just wasn't playing a lot of ramp. So I wanted to add some good ramp spells to the deck. We started with, I think I'll start with these two, Charcoal Diamond and Fire Diamond. They're just sitting here right on top of each other.
We like these cards. These actually play pretty well.
They're so underrated. People hate on the diamonds, but like the only time they're not good is if you're casting them later in the game and they don't enter spell. And you're trying to double spell or whatever. But if you're looking, the reason we run 13 pieces of ramp is to find a 2-mana rock in our first 2 turns, right?
Yep.
And if we find one of these, great. We can't cast a 1-mana spell, but if we drew into a 1-mana spell, then like boo-hoo. If we already had one, we've cast it already. So I think like we're pretty fine.
There's a very narrow window where these aren't good.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And then we can always if we're drawing enough cards, just throw them away because we don't need them, right?
Sure. And you already mentioned Black Market Connections. That's a really good, nice piece of ramp as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that one we're also slotting into the ramp category. And then the last ones would be Curse of Opulence, which I think is an underplayed card. And I think people play a lot of it. But not a lot of our play group plays a lot of Curse of Opulence.
I know. Every time this comes down, I'm like, oh man, this really skis the game.
It's good.
It really gives people a lot of gold.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is whenever that player's attacked, you create a gold token, and then the opponent's attacking that player create a gold token. So on your turn, only you create one. But then on everyone else's turn, besides the player you enchanted, if that person gets attacked, they create a gold and you create a gold. And it's so hard to resist as a player to just attack it.
You want to ramp.
Yes. And then you ramp 2 additional times. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I think with Valgavoth being big and having flying, I think this will be really good in the deck.
Oh, fun. Sure.
And then the last one is Cursed Mirror, which is
one of my faves.
So good. So phenomenally good. Untapped, taps for red, and also enters as a copy of any creature. I forget this a lot. A lot of copy effects are like a copy of a creature you control. No. But the fact that it just like comes down as a copy of any creature is so good.
This goes in every red deck. When this got reprinted in, I think it was Commander Masters, and it dropped to like 20 cents or something like that. I think I picked up like 10 of them because I was like, this is going to go in every one of my red decks. There's absolutely no reason to not run this in a red deck.
Yeah, I think for sure every 2-color red deck and potentially every 3-color red deck, depending on the colors.
Sure, because it doesn't fix colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right. Every 2-color red deck.
And a lot of 3-color red decks, depending on like what the strategy is, right?
Because if you care about creatures or whatever, then it's a lot better. But this is just steal the best. Like late game, you can just steal a Hoarding Broodlord or just some really crazy, big, powerful thing that your opponent has for a turn. And anymore, a lot of creatures, we mostly just care about their ETBs.
Yeah, right.
For a lot of creatures. And so you're going to hit something awesome with this.
Yeah, but if you care about attack triggers too, it has haste.
It has haste.
Take someone's like Atali. Either Atali is crazy with Cursed Mirror.
Yeah. This is just an excellent card. Like I said, I think it belongs in most red decks. And you're right.
Really
it's probably the more colors you have, it's probably worse. But it's still good. It's never bad.
Good. No. Yeah, I think it's a very good card. So that's why it's in the deck. It's our last piece of ramp here because I think it's really good. And then the last change we're going to be talking about, or not the last change, but the last change in terms of vegetables. I guess we can brush over lands. I removed a couple lands. We were playing.
Sure.
I think the deck was playing too many lands, and then we also added in some MDFCs that we're going to talk about. So Blood-Soaked Insight was one of them.
And we could go back through at a later point and make some of the lands better if there's any like really abominable. Like there's no reason to play Geothermal Bog, which is like a fetchable tapped land when you could play the Surveil version.
Right.
Right. So there are some lands that we could upgrade, but we won't worry about that here.
For sure. Yeah, I kind of ignored that for the purposes of this because our philosophy is play good lands, and if your deck isn't playing good lands, do some research and find out what lands are good. That's kind of a solved problem, as is a lot of things in Magic, but that especially so.
It may be worth it for us to do a video on lands at some point and just show like how we've looked at lands and how we treat lands, because there are a lot of lands out there, so I can understand how for some newer players it could be like very daunting to look at like a giant list of lands. So maybe we'll do that. It may be like a shorter episode or maybe a little boring if you're not super passionate about your mana base, but it could be helpful for newer players. We might let us know in the comments if it would be useful for us to do an episode all about lands.
Play these lands, top 10 lands in Magic the Gathering. If you're not playing these lands, you're making a mistake.
We'd have to do like top like 100 though.
Yeah, sure.
We could do top 10 cycles of lands.
Most Magic the Gathering players make this one mistake, and it's not playing the Surveil lands. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be
Many
good.
Magic the Gathering players ask,
yeah, exactly.
What land should I be playing?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very good prof, very good prof impression. So, moving on to interaction. This deck was playing a decent amount of interaction actually, and I think what I ended up cutting some of was the interaction in the deck. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
No, actually that's a lie. I think I maybe cut like one piece or two pieces. So the deck did end up with 12 pieces of interaction.
Okay, so a little lighter on interaction.
Little lighter on interaction. It was playing pretty good interaction, and you'll see that I only added in 4 pieces, which I think is pretty respectable. The first one being Bolt Bend.
Which I think is so cool.
Yeah,
and especially in this deck.
I don't think we talked about this. We wanted to build this at a mid power. We decided the power of this deck. We didn't mention that, I don't think, at all. We were building this towards a mid power. We skipped our first step. I apologize, everybody. We're building this deck as mid power. So you could play something like Deflecting Swat if we were playing at a higher power deck. This is the lower power version of Deflecting Swat, especially because our commander is 4 power to begin with. And so this is already a 1 mana spell to protect our commander, which I think is really good. The next one is also a 1 mana spell to protect our commander. It's Malakir Rebirth. He'll lose the counters. Valgavoth will lose the counters as Malakir Rebirth resolves. Sure. But you do get a draw trigger whenever someone targets Valgavoth, and so you'll just get more draw triggers, which is kind of cool.
So I have played this deck once. I have played this precon one time. It was awesome. It was so much fun to play. I absolutely adore this deck, even though I've only played it once. Big Valgavoth is cool, but what's even cooler is his triggered ability. I mean, that's really why we like Valgavoth. So losing the counters but saving it off of Malakir Rebirth is totally cool. That's not an issue with this deck.
Yeah, I think that's I think that'll be way better to have a Valgavoth than to potentially not have a big Valgavoth, right? Yeah. The next one here is Baleful Mastery, which is just such a good card. Way more people should be playing this. It's so fun.
This one is
especially in like mid and low powers. Like, it's just a very great card, and it's very political and fun. So it's 3 and a black for an instant. You may pay 1 and a black rather than pay the spell's mana cost. If 1 and a black was paid, an opponent draws a card. Exile target creature or planeswalker. So it's an exile effect in black, which is crazy. That hits more than just creatures, which is crazy at instant speed for 2 mana, which is really good.
This kind of combos with another card that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and also Scrawling Crawler, where you could also trigger them to lose life by making them draw a card.
That's pretty good. That's actually kind of tight. Assuming they haven't drawn their card for turn already.
Sure. Right? That's true. I guess it's redundant there, but that's funny.
But totally. If we were playing Orcish Bowmasters, this would be a great opportunity to
Orcish Bowmasters.
Make someone draw a card,
that's
ping them
not
with
going
Orcish
in this
Bowmasters.
mid-power deck.
No, it's not. Way too good, I think, for a mid-power deck. And then the last one here is Toxic Deluge.
Oh, yeah.
Just a very good card. Really good. I think we wanted the board wipes that the deck was playing were not very great. And I think Toxic Deluge is a very good one. And I think especially so because Valgavoth gets big, and so we can pay life, and Valgavoth might survive to be able to.
We can board wipe around Valgavoth.
Yeah, which is very good.
Yeah, that's cool. This is one that I've noticed is very good in your Tasigur deck, because you usually end up having big creatures in Tasigur because you're potting for them, and so you can board wipe and just leave behind your big creatures, and it's pretty nasty. So I like that tech in Valgavoth.
I think it's sick. Well, even in Tasigur, Tasigur's 5 toughness, which is pretty big for a commander, especially because you can cast Tasigur for kind of cheap. And so even just like a Toxic Deluge for 4 is so good.
Clears a lot of stuff off the board. I've actually really enjoyed the flexibility of board wipes that are -X, like Meat Hook Massacre and Toxic Deluge, because even if you don't clear everything off the board, you get to choose what gets cleared off the board. So you can either clear everything, or you can be like, you know what, I don't really care about your big stuff, and I want to save my big stuff. I just need to get rid of all of your little value engines. Then you can really shape your board wipe to take out what you want to take out, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, one that I've thought about running that I've actually seen people play in CDH recently in very specific decks is the one from Fallout. Nuclear Fallout is what it's called. It's called Nuclear Fallout. Each creature gets twice -X till end of turn.
Yeah.
So
this one is really cool.
It's
and then
really
gives rad
cool.
Counters.
Yeah, which I think is sick. I think that's a really good one. So that rounds out interaction. So the next thing will be the deck-specific cards, and I am seeing that I missed some here in my notes, which is great because we've added some more fun deck-specific cards. The first one being, I think this card shot up when the deck got announced as well, Chandra, Awakened Inferno.
Cool.
This
is card. The Planeswalker. This is the 6-mana one that gives your opponents emblems, right?
Yes, it's a 6-mana Planeswalker that cannot be countered. Enters with 6 loyalty, and then its +2 is each opponent gets an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, this emblem deals 1 damage to you.
Okay, so this guarantees that Valgavoth will be turned on for the rest of the game.
For the rest of the game, which is
amazing
crazy.
Because you can't interact with emblems, and you won't have a chance to counter it or to destroy it, to remove Chandra until after you've had a chance to activate the ability.
Yeah, this is
crazy.
This is at very least 6 mana. Activate Valgavoth for the rest of the game, which is nuts.
It's a bummer that this one shot up. This one's sweet.
It's a sweet card.
This deck.
Yeah. So the -3 is that Chandra Awakened Inferno deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. So is also a board wipe, which is very good. And then the -X is Chandra Awakened Inferno deals X damage to target creature or Planeswalker. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die, this turn exile instead. Which is, not that great. The +2 is what this is in here for.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then each turn, you just keep +2ing, and so people are losing 1, 2, unless you have Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin out, and then you
kind of want to leave it at 1.
Then you're doing 1, yeah, exactly. So anyway, I think it's a good include in the deck.
Cool.
The next one we have is Bloodchief Ascension, and all of you experienced deck builders out there might be saying, "Wait, this isn't a mill deck. Why are you playing Bloodchief Ascension?" Well, let me tell you something about Bloodchief Ascension. It is not a mill-specific card. Let's read Bloodchief Ascension, shall we? It is 1 black for an enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, easy, you may put a quest counter on Bloodchief Ascension. Then, the next clause is whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life.
You pointed something out about this card that I had never considered before, and that is when someone casts a spell and it resolves and it goes to the graveyard, it will trigger Bloodchief Ascension.
Yes, when someone cracks a fetch land, when someone's creature dies, that non-token creature dies, when someone sacrifices an artifact, non-token artifact. It's any card going into any graveyard from anywhere, that player loses
crazy.
2 life, which I think is really good when we're trying to pressure our opponent's life totals and burn them down. So
it does make them feel worse about casting spells at a late stage in the game when they're at 10 life, and they're like, if I cast a spell, I go down.
I go down to 8 life.
I lose 20% of my life total.
And Keltson's sitting over there with a 2020 Valgavoth.
Just drawing cards.
So the next one in here is Razorkin Needlehead, which I think is a very popular one for this deck. Pretty similar to the card we were talking about, the Scrawling Crawler. Yeah, this one is actually Baby Shieldred because it is half of the mana cost of Shieldred. Razorkin Needlehead has first strike on your turn. It's a 2/2. It's red. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needlehead deals 1 damage to them.
Yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's a great card. The only downside I foresee with this card is that it's damage dealing, and that is like a very, very niche scenario where it being damage and not life loss will matter. I don't think there's any downsides to this card.
No, I mean it is double red.
Yeah,
which is a bummer for turns,
true. But you're in 2 colors, so double red should be relatively easy to cast. And then the last one here that I think should have been in the Precon is Roiling Vortex. It is 1 in a red for an enchantment. I think this card also shot up to a lot when this Precon was first announced.
Yeah.
And it's not that great of a card outside of this deck.
So honestly, so did Razorkin Needlehead, but it's come down a lot since then.
Okay, yeah, wasn't it like $20 at one point?
It got pretty expensive. I don't know what it peaked at.
Yeah, that's crazy. People learned that these cards aren't generically good. They're just very good at Valgavoth. Roiling Vortex is 1 in red for an enchantment, and it says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. And then it says whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player.
He just randomly hoses free spells.
Yeah. So, yeah, kind of sick. Can scale with the power of the table, which is kind of fun. Honestly, how crazy is it that this is a full on, and you can also, you can pay red and opponents can't gain life this turn, which is like not nothing. No. How crazy is it that this is a full on enchantment for 2 mana that Chandra does for a +2. Yeah, that's crazy. It's nuts.
That's pretty crazy. That's cool though. This is sweet. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not surprised this one shot up in price. I'm not surprised it wasn't high in price before because this is a very narrow, very niche card.
Yeah. Very specific. Interesting. Very specific.
Very cool. This looks awesome. So what did you end up taking out besides you said a couple of lands?
Yeah, let's blaze through the removals, the excludes. Okay. So this is what was in the Precon. I removed 2 mountains in a swamp. It just was playing 1 too many lands, and we put in 2 MDFCs instead, which we like. Great. There was a sub-theme in this deck of there was a sub-theme in this deck of cards that cared about like creatures dying, so like Morbid Opportunist.
Oh. Which Sir Conrad.
And like Sir Conrad and stuff like that. Yeah. And Sir Conrad cares about mill as well, and it does 1 damage each opponent, but I don't think like those type of cards I don't think we cared about. And then like I said, there were cards like Fear of Burning Alive that deals 4 damage when it enters. And then
sure. And it's like, what is this doing? It's my turn. It's not triggering Valgavoth.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And then when a creature if you have Delirium, when a source you control deals non-combat damage to opponent, if there are 4 more card types in your graveyard, it deals damage to that equal to that amount of damage to a creature that player controls, which I didn't feel like was
interesting.
Was for 6 mana. I don't think that's what we were like shooting for with this deck. Yeah, I think something similar would be like Karavek the Merciless. Sick card. Yeah. And I guess Lord of Pain. So these 2. We'll talk about both of these.
Karavek, and Vile Smasher.
And Vile Smasher. So the thing I didn't like about this is Vile Smasher triggers on our turn and only on our spells. Don't like that. We want things to trigger on other people's turns. Thing I didn't like about Lord of Pain is that when a player casts their first spell, you choose another player. So it's not hurting players on their own turns. And it's 5 mana.
I've never noticed that's how it's templated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like I just felt like it wasn't
another target player. Whoa, so it actually doesn't even work with Valgavoth.
Yeah, I mean it
crazy
in the sense that you're hurting people's life totals, but outside of that, yeah, not really. And then Karavek the Merciless is 7 mana for a 5/4 that whenever opponent casts a spell, Karavek deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. So same kind of thing as Lord of Pain.
You can't hit that player though.
You can't
remove one of their creatures.
You can't hit that player. You can remove creatures, but it only triggers on opponent spells. Lord of Pain also triggers on your spells, which is kind of sick.
Crazy.
So yeah, we ended up getting rid of that as well. In terms of some of the vegetables, I cut Decree of Pain. It's a board wipe, not a particularly good board wipe. I didn't think we wanted it in our deck. We're already drawing a bunch of cards, and this is just an 8 mana board wipe. I just as soon for 1 more mana play Garruk's Wake.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah,
right.
To just remove your opponent's creatures.
Yeah, exactly. Tectonic Giant, kind of a similar problem. I guess we should just go across the top. I'm kind of jumping around, but it deals damage on our turn or when it becomes the target of a spell. No one's really targeting this with a spell on their own turn necessarily, and it's giving us subpar card draw and does damage to each opponent, but it's not like great. So that one we removed. Solemn Simulacrum, good card. I don't think our deck cares about Solemn Simulacrum, so it's not really doing anything for our deck.
There's better card draw and there's better ramp.
Yep, exactly. We'll jump up here to Sadistic Shell Game. Fun card from this deck, not a great card from this deck. I'd rather just play some targeted removal.
Sure, it's fun and flavorful, but it's
fun
not
and flavorful.
helping the theme.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and at its worst, everyone chooses the same creature, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like 4 mana removal for a single creature, which is not great. Brash Taunter, another one that deals damage, but like is not.
I'm sorry. I'm picturing in my mind where opponent number 3 is like, everyone just pick my token. Everyone just pick my token. And so player 1 picks that token, player 2 picks that token, and opponent
Gets to
3
choose anything they
just
want.
chooses anything they want.
That's really funny.
Yeah,
those vote in order ones are mean. Those are mean
Yeah.
cards. Those can ruin friendships. And then Mask of Grizzlebrand, I think, is actually kind of sick in the deck because it can give Valgavoth lifelink, but I just have found that 3 mana for an equipment and then 3 mana to equip is not great.
I have tried to love this card. I remember very early on, because this is from one of the
Lord of the Rings. No.
Innistrad.
Innistrad, yeah.
Midnight Hunt. Oh, was this only first printed in Midnight Hunt?
Yeah, I think it was Midnight Hunt, yeah.
I've tried to put this card in several decks, and it has never performed well. I've never gotten this card to do the thing.
Yeah, I don't think it feels very good. Plus, the creature gets exiled, and then what did you do?
It's just like 6 mana.
Yeah, exactly. The other ones I got rid of were Barb Flare Gremlin, which is mana barbs on a stick, which I didn't really like, and Enchanter's Bane, which just screws enchantments.
Cool.
Which is kind of sick, I guess. I don't know. I didn't feel like that was particularly good. And we already talked about Stormfist Crusader. And the last 2 here are Spiked Corridor and Torture Pit together, which is an enchantment room. The first one makes 3 devils. And then the other one increases the non-combat damage you're doing, which I think is decent, but I'd rather just play more effects, I guess, than...
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
I
guess
just play a 4 mana one that deals 2 damage.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Unless you have a lot of.
You'd probably have to have
out
3 sources. Yeah, you'd probably have to have 3 sources for it to feel really good.
For the plus, to be doing its thing. So, and the last one here is Blood Pact, which is just a worse Night's Whisper, but instant speed.
Except for you can make your opponent do it so that you can activate Valgavoth and draw 1 card.
Yes, and if you have Razor Needle head out, they lose 4 life instead, which is not
broken.
Not nothing. Busted. I would pay 4 life to draw 2 cards for free. That would be sick. Have an opponent. You draw 2 cards, lose 4 life, and your opponent taps 3 lands they control.
Sounds like a great spell.
Crazy card.
I love it. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Spencer. Thanks for going through this and giving me some recommendations. I'm excited about this deck.
Yeah, hopefully this is a good upgrade to your Precon. And hopefully if for anyone that's building a Valgavoth deck, they're stoked about their deck and they want to upgrade it with these cards. Or other cards like them. Or other cards not like them. But hopefully we've at least given you some tools for upgrading your Precon. So we're going to magically switch out of Moxfield and back into our beautiful view here of just us. Thank you everyone for coming and watching. This has been a really fun series to talk about and think about because I think there's a lot of friction between each of these steps of getting into Commander. I think obviously the friction gets less as you keep going, but only marginally. I don't think it gets a lot less. Even earlier this year when I was trying to get into CDH, the friction felt pretty real that I was moving into a different realm of Commander. And so hopefully this is going to be helpful for people who are trying to upgrade their Precons for the first time.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Please subscribe for more weekly Commander content. You can join our Discord. You can find us at thecommanderpod.com. And until next time, remember to always pay the one.